When the oncologist said 6 months, my first thought wasn't about dying. It was about my son, about whether he'd even come to my funeral. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old. And this is the story of how the child I raised alone for 4 decades disappeared the moment he said, "I do." I didn't cry when Dr. Patel told me about the pancreatic cancer. I'd already done my crying. 18 months earlier, on November 3, 2023, the day my son Daniel blocked my number 3 hours after I asked if I could meet his fiancée before the wedding. The wedding I'd saved $18,000 to help pay for. You need to understand something. I'm not a bitter person. I don't hate easily. But I'm sitting here in this rental apartment, looking at the scan results on my kitchen table, and the person I want to call doesn't take my calls anymore. The person I worked double shifts to feed. The boy I put through college while cleaning houses on weekends. The man who promised me at his high school graduation that he'd always take care of me. He kept that promise for 38 years. Then he met Rebecca. I know what you're thinking. Here's another mother who can't let go. Another woman who thinks no one is good enough for her son. But here's what makes my story different. I never met her. Not once. In the 2 years they dated, the 8 months they were engaged, and the 1.5 years they've been married, I have never been in the same room as the woman who convinced my son I was toxic. I tried. God knows I tried. The last message I sent Daniel was 6 weeks ago, March 14th, 2024. I kept it simple. I have something important to tell you. Please call when you can. He didn't block me that time. He just never responded. And now I know what I was going to tell him will probably go unsaid, that his mother has stage 4 cancer, that there's no treatment plan, just pain management, that I have maybe Christmas, if I'm lucky, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't really about cancer. It's about something that metastasized long before any tumor did. It's about how love can be used as a weapon, how isolation happens gradually, then suddenly, and how the cruelest thing someone can do isn't to hurt you directly, but to turn your child into a stranger. This started long before November 3rd, 2023. I just didn't see it happening. None of us do, until it's too late. Daniel was born on July 22nd, 1985, in a hospital room where I labored alone for 14 hours. His father, Marcus, had left 2 months into my pregnancy, just walked out of our apartment in Queens with a duffel bag and a promise to figure things out. I never heard from him again. No child support, no birthday cards, nothing, so it was just us, me and my boy. I was 32 years old, with a high school diploma and a job as a receptionist at a dental office. My salary was $24,000 a year. When Daniel was born, I did the math. Daycare would cost more than I made. So I became a night shift nurse's aide at Mount Sinai. That way, I could be with him during the day and work while he slept. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, would listen for him through the thin walls of our apartment building. I paid her $50 a week. It was all I could spare. For years, my life was a rotation of diaper changes, shift work, and exhaustion so deep I'd sometimes fall asleep standing up on the subway. But Daniel thrived. He was a happy kid, curious, kind. He'd bring me dandelions from the playground and call them sunshine flowers. On Mother's Day when he was 7, he made me breakfast. Burnt toast and orange juice with so much pulp it was basically a smoothie. I kept the card he made me in my purse for 5 years until it fell apart. I worked my way up. By the time Daniel was in middle school, I'd become a licensed practical nurse, better pay, day shifts. I could finally go to his school events. I never missed a parent-teacher conference. Not one. I was there for every science fair, every soccer game, every school concert where he played trumpet in the back row, slightly off-key but giving it everything he had. The sacrifices were quiet ones. I wore the same winter coat for 12 years. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. I bought birthday cakes from the discount bakery on Tuesday nights when they marked everything down. Daniel never knew we were poor. I made sure of that. He had new sneakers when he needed them. He went on the class trip to Washington, D.C. He had a laptop for high school, even though it meant I worked overtime for 3 months straight to pay for it. When he got into SUNY Albany, I cried, happy tears, proud tears. We sat at our kitchen table, the one I'd bought at a yard sale and refinished myself, and I told him I'd find a way to pay for it, and I did. I took out loans in my name. I picked up weekend shifts. I started cleaning houses for a small agency that paid under the table. Bathrooms, kitchens, floors. My knees still ache. From those years of scrubbing tile grout. Daniel graduated in 2007 with a degree in business administration, no student debt. He hugged me at his graduation and whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom. I'm going to make you so proud." And he did. He got a good job at a consulting firm in Manhattan. Started making real money. Within 5 years, he was pulling in $85,000 a year, and for the first time in my life, I could breathe. He helped me move out of Queens in 2012. Got me into a small one-bedroom in Yonkers. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. He paid the security deposit, $2,400. He said, "Mom, you've given me everything. Let me do this." I cried in the empty living room before the movers came. Happy tears again. We were close. That's what I need you to understand. This wasn't a strained relationship that finally broke. We talked 3-4 times a week. He'd come over for Sunday dinner. I'd make his favorite, chicken parmesan with the sauce from scratch, the way my own mother taught me. He'd bring me flowers sometimes, just because. On my birthday, on holidays, he'd take me out. Nice restaurants where I'd feel awkward about the prices, but he'd insist. "You deserve this," he'd say. I met a few of his girlfriends over the years, nice women. We'd have coffee, chat about their jobs, their families. Some relationships lasted a few months. One lasted nearly 2 years. When they ended, Daniel would come over and we'd talk. I'd listen. I never interfered. That wasn't my place. Then, in the spring of 2021, he mentioned Rebecca. "I met someone, Mom," he said over the phone. His voice had that lightness to it, that excitement. "She's different, special. I think you're really going to like her." "Tell me about her," I said. I was folding laundry in my living room, pressing the phone between my shoulder and ear. "She's an event planner, smart, funny. We met through work. She planned a conference for one of our clients." He paused. "She's really independent, Mom. She's got her own business, her own place. She doesn't need anyone, you know. But she chose me. Something in that phrasing stuck with me. She doesn't need anyone, but I pushed it aside. I was happy for him. He sounded happy. "When can I meet her?" I asked. "Soon," he said. "She's just really busy with work right now. Summer is her crazy season. Weddings, corporate events. But soon, definitely. Soon became later. Later became eventually. Eventually became never. At first, there were reasonable excuses. She had a wedding every weekend. She was traveling for work. She had family visiting. Daniel and I still talked regularly, but our Sunday dinners became less frequent. Every other week, then once a month. He was busy too, he said. Work was demanding. Rebecca had introduced him to new friends. They were doing couple things. I understood. He was building a life. That's what you want for your child. But then small things started shifting. In December 2021, I invited him for Christmas. He said they were spending it with Rebecca's family in Connecticut. I said, "What about Christmas Eve, or the day after?" He said Rebecca's family did a whole extended celebration. "Maybe New Year's?" I offered. He said they had plans with friends. I spent Christmas alone that year. I told myself it was fine. He was 36. He had a girlfriend. This was normal. But it didn't feel normal. His calls became shorter. When I'd ask about his life, his answers got vague. Work's good. Rebecca's good. Everything's good. When I'd suggest getting together, there was always a reason why it wouldn't work. I started to feel like I was chasing him. So I pulled back. I didn't want to be that mother. The clingy one. The burden. In March 2022, he called to tell me they were engaged. "That's wonderful, honey," I said. My heart was racing. Finally, I thought, finally I'll meet her. The wedding planning would bring us together. "Have you set a date? We're thinking. October. Small ceremony. Just close family and friends. I can't wait to help however you need, I said, and I'd love to finally meet Rebecca. Maybe we could all have dinner to celebrate? There was a pause, a long one. She's really particular about the planning, Mom. She wants to handle most of it herself. It's kind of her thing, you know, with work and everything. Of course, I said, but I'd still love to meet her. Even just for coffee. Yeah, we'll set something up, he said. But his tone had changed, distant, like he was already moving on to the next part of his day. We never set anything up. The warning signs were small at first, easy to dismiss, easy to blame on busy schedules and wedding stress. But looking back, I can trace the exact pattern of how I was erased from my son's life. It started with the phone calls. In April 2022, I called Daniel on a Tuesday evening, our usual time. The phone rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I figured he was busy. I called again on Thursday. Voicemail again. Finally, on Saturday, he texted, "Sorry, been crazy busy. Can't really talk this week. We'll call soon." Soon was 2 weeks later. When he finally called, the conversation lasted maybe 8 minutes. He sounded distracted. I could hear Rebecca's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out what she was saying. When I asked how wedding planning was going, he said, "Fine. Rebecca's handling it." "Has she picked a dress?" I asked, trying to sound interested, trying to connect. "I don't really know the details, Mom. She likes to surprise me." "Well, I'd love to help with anything, or just hear about it. I'm excited for you both." Another pause. "I know. But like I said, Rebecca's got it under control." I felt it then. A door closing, gently, but firmly. In May, I didn't hear from him at all. Not a single call. I texted him 3 times. Short messages, "Thinking of you, hope you're doing well, would love to catch up when you have time," he responded once. "Thanks, Mom, things are good." On Mother's Day, he sent flowers, nice ones, expensive. The card said, "Happy Mother's Day. Love, Daniel and Rebecca." I stared at that card for a long time. It was the first time I'd seen her name connected to his in any personal way. But it felt like a signature on a business transaction, not a message from my son. I called to thank him. "Voicemail," I texted. No response. By June, I was starting to feel desperate. I kept wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I said something that offended him, offended her? I replayed every conversation in my mind. I came up empty. The only thing I'd done was exist. And apparently, that was becoming a problem. In July 2022, I did something I'm not proud of. I looked up Rebecca online. I found her business page, Elegant Affairs Event Planning. There were photos of weddings she'd done, beautiful setups, detailed work. In her profile photo, she was pretty, polished, blonde hair styled perfectly, professional smile, mid-30s, I guessed. In her About Me section, she wrote about creating exclusive experiences for discerning clients and how she believed in curating intimate celebrations free from unnecessary drama. That phrase stuck with me. Unnecessary drama. I wondered if that's what I was. Unnecessary drama. The mother-in-law-to-be who hadn't even been given a chance to be dramatic. I found Daniel on her social media. They'd made their relationship public. There were photos of them at restaurants, at weekend trips, at friends' gatherings, beautiful couple photos. In every single one, he looked happy, lighter somehow, like he'd found something he'd been missing. In none of those photos, in none of those posts, was there any mention of his family, of his mother, of his history. It was like he'd started existing the day he met her. In August 2022, I made a decision. I would reach out to Rebecca directly. I sent her a Facebook message. I kept it warm, respectful, short. "Hi, Rebecca. I'm Daniel's mother, Margaret. I know you're both incredibly busy with wedding planning, but I'd love to meet you when you have a chance. Maybe we could grab coffee? I'm so happy for you both. Congratulations on your engagement." I checked that message every day for 2 weeks, seen but never answered. I told myself it was an oversight. She was busy. She planned events for a living. She probably got 100 messages a day, but deep down, I knew. She'd seen it. She'd read it. She'd chosen not to respond. In September, Daniel finally called me. I was so relieved to hear his voice that I almost cried. "Hey, Mom. Sorry I've been MIA. Work has been insane, and the wedding stuff is ramping up. It's okay, honey. I understand. How are you? How's Rebecca?" "We're good. Really good. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I wanted to talk to you about something." My heart lifted. Finally, an invitation. A way in. "The wedding," he continued, "we've decided to keep it really small. Like, really intimate. Just 20 people. Rebecca's family, a few close friends, and, well, it's kind of a destination thing. We're doing it at a vineyard in Napa. Napa. Wow, that sounds beautiful. Yeah, it's this place Rebecca's been dreaming about. But here's the thing, Mom. Because it's so small and so far, and with travel costs and everything, we're really limiting it to people who, Rebecca knows well. Her close circle." The air went out of my lungs. "I don't understand. It's not personal, Mom. It's just how she wants it. Small, intimate. Her vision. Daniel, I'm your mother. I know, and I wanted you there, but Rebecca really feels strongly about this. She's very particular about the energy at her events. She says too many people who don't know each other well can create tension. I'm not people, Daniel. I'm your mother. The person who raised you. Who paid for your college. Who, Mom, please don't make this harder than it is. Harder for, who? You? Or her?" His voice got cold. Colder than I'd ever heard it. "I'm not doing this right now." I called to explain. "I'm sorry you're upset, but this is what we've decided. We? Or her?" He hung up. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, shaking. That conversation happened on September 18th, 2022, at 7:34 p.m. I remember because I looked at the call log over and over, trying to make sense of it. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the boy who brought me dandelions, the teenager who hugged me at his graduation, the man who paid my security deposit and said I deserved everything. Where did he go? When did he leave? I called him back the next day. Voicemail. I texted, "Daniel, I'm sorry for getting upset. I just love you and want to be part of your celebration. Can we please talk?" No response. I texted again 2 days later. "I'm not trying to interfere. I just want you to be happy. I love you." No response. I waited a week. Then I sent one more message. "I'll respect your decision, but please know I'll always be here for you, whenever you need me." He responded that time, "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate that." That was it. That was all I got. The wedding was October 15th, 2022. I know because I saw photos eventually, posted by Rebecca's friends, Daniel in a navy suit, Rebecca in a sleek, elegant dress, vineyard in the background, golden hour lighting, everyone smiling, toasts, dancing, celebration. I spent that day in my apartment. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned, I watched TV, I cooked dinner for one, but at 6 p.m., I broke down. I sat on my bathroom floor and cried so hard I thought I might throw up. My son got married, and I wasn't there. My son, who I'd given everything to, had chosen a woman who saw me as unnecessary drama. A week after the wedding, I sent a card to the address I still had for Daniel's old apartment. I didn't know if he still lived there. Inside, I wrote, "Congratulations on your wedding. I hope you're both very happy. I love you always, Mom." I tucked in a check for $5,000. It was most of my savings, but I wanted him to know I wasn't angry. I still supported him. The check was never cashed. The card was never acknowledged. In November 2022, I tried a different approach. I sent a text asking if we could meet for lunch. Just the two of us. No pressure. No drama. Just mother and son. He responded, "Things are really busy right now with work and settling into married life. Maybe after the holidays." After the holidays came. January 2023. I texted again. No response. February, March, April. Every month, I'd send one simple message. "Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Would love to hear your voice. Some got responses, most didn't. In May 2023, I tried calling. The number was disconnected. He'd changed his phone number. And he hadn't told me. I felt panic rising. I drove to his old apartment in Manhattan. The doorman told me he'd moved out 6 months ago, no forwarding address. My son had vanished. I found his work number through the company website. I called his office. The receptionist said, "Daniel Fletcher is no longer with the company. He'd left his job." I didn't know. He hadn't told me. In June 2023, I did the only thing I could think of. I wrote him a letter. I found Rebecca's business address online and sent it there, hoping he'd see it. "Dear Daniel, I don't know what I've done to deserve this silence. I don't know if you're angry with me, or if Rebecca has asked you to distance yourself, or if you've simply moved on, but I need you to know something. I'm not trying to control your life. I'm not trying to interfere in your marriage. I just want to know that you're okay, that you're happy, that I didn't lose you completely. You're my only child, my only family. For 40 years, it's been you and me. I know you have a new family now. I know Rebecca is your priority, as she should be, but there's room for more than one person in your life. There's room for the woman who raised you. If I've hurt you in some way I don't understand, please tell me. Let me apologize. Let me make it right. But please don't shut me out like this. Please don't let me disappear. I love you. I will always love you. Nothing can change that. Mom, I never got a response. I spent the summer of 2023 inches of fog. I'd go to work at the clinic where I did part-time administrative nursing. I'd come home. I'd eat dinner alone. I'd watch TV without really seeing it. My neighbors would ask how I was doing. Fine, I'd say. Just fine. But I wasn't fine. I was grieving someone who was still alive. Grieving a relationship that hadn't died but had been deliberately killed. It's a strange kind of loss. There's no funeral, no closure, no sympathy cards. Just an empty space where your child used to be. In August 2023, something happened that changed everything. I was at the clinic filing patient charts when I saw her, Rebecca. She was in the waiting room with an older woman who I assumed was her mother. They were laughing about something, heads close together. Rebecca looked exactly like her photos, polished, put together. The older woman had the same coloring, the same refined features. I froze. My hands went numb. This was her. The woman who'd convinced my son I was toxic. The woman who'd orchestrated my removal from his life without ever speaking to me. I didn't approach them. I just watched, and what I saw confused me. She was warm with her mother, affectionate. They held hands in the waiting room. When the nurse called them back, Rebecca kissed her mother's cheek. So she wasn't someone who hated mothers. She loved her own mother. She just hated me. Or the idea of me. After they left, I did something I shouldn't have. I looked up her mother's appointment. Patricia Sinclair. Annual checkup. Same last name as Rebecca before she married Daniel. I stared at that name. Patricia Sinclair. She had access to my son. She got to be part of their life. I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I'd seen. Rebecca and her mother, so comfortable together, so connected. And I realized something. This wasn't about me being difficult. This wasn't about protecting Daniel from negativity. This was about control, about Rebecca deciding who got to exist in Daniel's world. And I wasn't part of her curated vision. In September 2023, I made a decision. I was going to hire a private investigator. I needed to know where Daniel was living, if he was okay, if there was something bigger happening that I didn't understand. It sounds extreme, I know, but I was desperate. I'd lost my only child to a woman I'd never met, and I needed answers. The investigator's name was Linda Morrison. She charged $800 for a basic locate and wellness check. I paid her on September 12, 2023. She was efficient, professional. Within a week, she had Daniel's new address. A house in Westchester, not an apartment, a house, with a mortgage in both their names. They purchased it in December 2022, Linda told me over the phone. 4-bedroom colonial, Nice neighborhood, $675,000. According to public records, your son took out a significant mortgage. His wife contributed to the down payment, but your son is listed as the primary borrower. I felt sick. He'd bought a house with 4 bedrooms, room for a family, room for growth, and he hadn't told me, hadn't invited me to see it, hadn't mentioned it in any of our brief surface-level text exchanges. Is there anything else you'd like me to look into? Linda asked gently. Is he okay? Does he seem happy? I did a visual wellness check. Your son appears healthy. He leaves for work around 7:30 a.m., comes home around 6 p.m. On weekends, I observed them doing normal couple activities, groceries, yard work, dinner with friends. And his wife, Rebecca? Linda paused. Her business is successful. She's well regarded in the industry, but I did find something interesting. I spoke with a few people in their social circle, very discreetly. One former friend of your son mentioned that Rebecca tends to be, quote, possessive. Another person said that Daniel seemed to have pulled away from anyone who knew him before the relationship. What does that mean? It's a pattern. In cases of coercive control, one partner gradually isolates the other from their previous support system, family, old friends, anyone who knew them before. It creates dependency. Loyalty. My hands were shaking. You think my son is being controlled? I think your son is in a relationship with someone who has very specific ideas about who should be in their life. Whether that constitutes control is a legal and personal matter, but the pattern is recognizable. I thanked her, paid her final invoice, and sat with that information for 3 days. On November 3rd, 2023, I made a choice. I was going to reach out one more time, one final attempt. I sent Daniel a text. Hi, honey. I know we haven't talked much lately. I miss you. I'm not trying to cause problems in your marriage, but I'd love to see you. Even just for an hour. Can we meet for coffee? Please. I'm your mother, and I love you. 3 hours later, my number was blocked. I know because when I tried to call, I got an automated message. The subscriber you are trying to reach is not accepting calls from this number. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and screamed. Actually screamed. I pounded my steering wheel until my hands hurt. Then I cried. The kind of crying where you can't catch your breath, where your chest feels like it's caving in. My son had blocked me. After 40 years of sacrifice, love, and devotion, he'd pressed a button and made me disappear. That's when I knew. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't wedding stress or adjustment to married life. This was permanent. Rebecca had won. She'd successfully removed me from Daniel's life, and he'd let her. In December 2023, I tried one last thing. I sent a Christmas card to their house. Inside, I wrote, Daniel and Rebecca, I hope you're both happy and healthy. I think about you every day. I'm not angry. I just miss you. If you ever want to reach out, I'm here. Merry Christmas. Love always, Mom. The card came back 3 weeks later. Return to sender. Someone had written it in neat, feminine handwriting. Not Daniel's, Rebecca's. I kept that returned card. I still have it. It sits in a drawer in my bedroom. Sometimes I take it out and stare at those 3 words, return to sender, like I was junk mail, like I was spam, like I was something unwanted that needed to be sent away. That was the moment I accepted it. My son was gone. The person I'd raised, the child I'd given everything to, had made his choice, and his choice wasn't me. I stopped trying. What else could I do? January 2024 came. I turned 71 on January 9th. No call, no text, no card, nothing. My birthday passed like any other day. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, brought me a cupcake. She'd noticed I seemed sad lately. You okay, Margaret? She asked. I lied. I'm fine, just getting older. She smiled and patted my hand. Aren't we all? In February, I started having symptoms. Back pain that wouldn't go away. Fatigue. Weight loss even though I was eating normally. I ignored it for a few weeks. Then a month. Then 2 months. In late March, Mrs. Rodriguez insisted I see a doctor. "You look yellow," she said. "Your eyes. Something's wrong." I went to my primary care doctor on March 28, 2024. Dr. Sarah Huang examined me, ran blood tests, and immediately ordered a CT scan. "I'm seeing elevated liver enzymes," she said, "and bilirubin levels that concern me. I want to rule out anything serious." The CT scan was April 3, 2024. The results came back April 5. Dr. Huang called me herself, asked me to come in. That's when I knew. Doctors don't ask you to come in for good news. April 8, 2024. That's the day my life officially ended. That's the day Dr. Patel, the oncologist, said the words, "pancreatic cancer, stage 4, metastasized to liver." He kept talking about tumors and treatment options and palliative care, but all I heard was 6 months, maybe less. All I thought was, Daniel will never know. I went home, sat on my couch, stared at my phone, the phone my son had blocked. And I thought about calling someone, anyone. But who? I didn't have many close friends. I'd spent so much of my life working and raising Daniel that I'd never built a strong social network. My parents were gone. My sister lived in Arizona and we talked maybe twice a year. I was alone. Truly alone. Dying alone. And the one person who should care didn't even know. Couldn't know. Because his wife had decided I didn't deserve to exist in their world. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. I'm not particularly religious, but I was desperate. I prayed for peace, for acceptance, for some kind of closure before the end. I didn't pray for my son to come back. I'd given up on that. I just prayed to die without so much unfinished business, so much unspoken love. In late April, I started telling people, Dr. Huang, Mrs. Rodriguez, a few acquaintances from work. They were kind, sympathetic. Some cried. Everyone asked the same question. "Does your son know?" "No," I'd say. "We're not in touch." They'd look at me with such pity, such confusion. How could a mother and son not be in touch when she's dying? What kind of person does that? The kind of person who's been systematically erased from their child's life. On May 1, 2024, I made one final attempt. I knew it probably wouldn't work, but I had to try. I created a new email address, something Daniel wouldn't recognize, and I sent him a message. "Daniel, this is your mother. I know we haven't spoken in a long time. I know you've blocked my number and returned my cards. I know you don't want me in your life anymore. I'm writing, not to beg or to guilt you, but to tell you something important. I have cancer, pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors have given me 6 months, probably less. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking you to come back. I just thought you should know, because you're my son, and I love you, and if you want to see me before I die, I'm here. If you don't, I understand. I'll die knowing I did everything I could to love you, that I gave you the best life I was capable of giving, that I never stopped hoping we'd talk again. Take care of yourself, Daniel. Be happy, live well, and know that even in silence, even in distance, you are loved. Mom." I sent it on May 1 at 11:47 p.m. I checked my email every hour for 3 days. Nothing. Not even a bounce back, which meant he'd received it. He'd read it, and he'd chosen not to respond. On May 6, 2024, I got an email. My heart stopped. But it wasn't from Daniel. It was from Rebecca. The subject line said, "Please stop contacting my husband." I sat there, staring at that subject line for 5 full minutes before I could bring myself to open it. The email was short, clinical, cold. "Margaret, Daniel has received your recent email. He has asked me to respond on his behalf. Your attempts to contact him are unwelcome and causing stress during an already difficult time. He has moved on with his life and has no desire to revisit past relationships that were unhealthy for him. Your medical situation, while unfortunate, does not entitle you to access to Daniel's life or emotional energy. He is focused on his marriage and his future, and he needs you to respect his boundaries. Please do not contact him again through any means. Further attempts will be considered harassment. Regards, Rebecca Fletcher. I read that email 10 times, then 20. Each time, new details jumped out. Unwelcome, stress, unhealthy relationships, not entitled. And the signature, Rebecca Fletcher. She'd taken his last name. My name. The name I'd given him. And she was using it to tell me my dying wish didn't matter. I sat in my kitchen and felt something I hadn't felt before. Not sadness, not grief, not even anger, just cold, absolute clarity. Rebecca hadn't just isolated Daniel. She'd rewritten our history. She'd convinced him that his childhood was unhealthy, that I was toxic. That cutting me off was self-care, not cruelty. And he'd believed her. I didn't respond to Rebecca's email. What would be the point? I couldn't compete with the narrative she'd built. Instead, I made a different choice. I decided to stop dying alone in silence. On May 15, 2024, I joined an online support group called Estranged Parents Healing Circle. It was free, anonymous, just a forum where people shared their stories. I read for 2 weeks before I posted anything, and what I read broke my heart and healed it at the same time. There were hundreds of us, mothers and fathers who'd been cut off by their adult children. Some had clear reasons, mistakes they'd made, abuse they'd inflicted. But many, like me, had no idea what they'd done wrong. They'd just been erased. Often after their child met a romantic partner who saw the parent as competition, as threat, as unnecessary complication. I posted my story on May 29th. I kept it simple. 7 one-year-old mother, raised son alone for 40 years. He married someone who convinced him I was toxic without ever meeting me. Now I have 6 months to live and he won't speak to me. The responses came within hours. Dozens of them. This is my story too. I thought I was the only one. You're not alone. One woman, Janet from Toronto, sent me a private message. My daughter cut me off 5 years ago when she married a man who wanted her unencumbered by family drama. I didn't even know what drama he meant. I'd always been supportive, loving, present. But to him, I was a reminder that she had a life before him, and he couldn't tolerate that. Another woman, Carol, from Ohio, wrote, "It's called parental alienation by a spouse. It's more common than people think. Your son may believe he's making his own choices, but he's been slowly conditioned to see you as the problem. It's coercive control. And it's devastating. I spent hours reading stories, responding to others, finding community in shared pain, and something shifted. I stopped feeling crazy. Stopped feeling like I'd somehow deserved this. I hadn't been a perfect mother, no one is, but I'd been a good mother, a loving mother. And that hadn't been enough to protect against someone else's manipulation. In early June, one member posted about something called an ethical will. It's a document where you write down your values, your life lessons, your hopes for those you leave behind. Not a legal will with assets, but an emotional legacy. I decided to write one. Not for Daniel, though he was in every word, but for myself, for closure, for proof that I'd existed and loved and tried. I wrote it over the course of 2 weeks. It was 12 pages long. I wrote about my childhood, about meeting Marcus and the heartbreak of being left, about Daniel's birth and those early exhausting years, about the joy of watching him grow, about working multiple jobs to give him opportunities, about his graduation, his success, his kindness before he met Rebecca. I wrote about what I'd learned. That love doesn't guarantee loyalty, that sometimes people rewrite their own history to justify their present, that you can do everything right and still lose. But also that sacrifice given freely is never wasted, even if it's not appreciated, that I'd loved well, even if that love had been rejected. I ended it with this: Daniel, if you ever read this after I'm gone, know that I never stopped loving you. I forgave you before you even knew there was something to forgive. I hope you're happy. I hope Rebecca makes you feel whole. I hope you build a beautiful life, and I hope someday, if you have, Children. You understand what it feels like to love someone so much that losing them feels like losing yourself. I hope you never feel what I felt. But if you do, I hope you're kinder to yourself than you were to me. I had it notarized, sealed. Left instructions with my lawyer that it should be mailed to Daniel 60 days after my death to whatever address could be found for him. By mid-June, I was declining. The pain was getting worse. I started palliative care. A home health nurse named Patricia came 3 times a week. She was gentle, warm. She'd sit with me after checking my vitals and just talk. She reminded me of myself at her age, actually, working hard, caring for strangers like they were family. "Do you have children?" I asked her one day. 2 daughters, grown now. One's in California, the other's in Boston. We FaceTime every Sunday. I smiled. "That's wonderful. Are you close with your son?" she asked. She'd seen his photo on my fridge. A picture from 10 years ago, before Rebecca. "We were," I said. "Once." She didn't push. Just nodded. "Sometimes people grow apart. Doesn't mean the love wasn't real," I cried after she left that day. Because she was wrong. We hadn't grown apart. We'd been torn apart. But there was something comforting in her assumption that this was normal life stuff, natural distance, not the deliberate cruelty it actually was. In July, something unexpected happened. My story from the online group had been shared in another forum, then another. Somehow, it made its way to a woman named Dr. Sarah Brighton, who hosted a podcast about family estrangement. She reached out, asked if I'd be willing to tell my story anonymously, not for money, just to help others feel less alone. I said yes. What did I have to lose? The podcast episode aired on July 22, 2024, Daniel's 39th birthday. I don't think I planned that consciously, but the universe has a sense of irony. Dr. Brighton was kind. She interviewed me for 2 hours, then edited it down to 45 minutes. She asked gentle questions, let me cry when I needed to. Didn't try to make me sound bitter or angry, just sad, just human. The episode was called When Love Isn't Enough, a mother's story of terminal cancer and estrangement. I listened to it once, heard my own voice, shaky and tired, talking about my son, about loving him, about losing him, about dying without closure. It was the first time I'd heard my own grief out loud. It sounded worse than it felt, more devastating, because hearing it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The episode got thousands of downloads, the comments section filled up, people sharing their own stories, thanking me, saying they finally felt understood. One comment stood out to me. This could be my mother's story. I cut her off 2 years ago because my husband convinced me she was manipulative. But listening to this, I wonder if I was wrong. I'm going to call her tomorrow, I cried reading that. Because even if I couldn't save my own relationship, maybe I'd saved someone else's. In early August, Patricia, my nurse, came for a visit and found me on the floor. I'd fallen trying to get to the bathroom. The cancer had spread to my bones. I was weak, frail. She called an ambulance. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Dr. Patel came to see me. Margaret, we need to talk about hospice care. You're declining faster than we anticipated. I'd give you 6 to 8 weeks now, not months. 6 to 8 weeks. It was early August. I'd maybe make it to October if I was lucky. Maybe my son's wedding anniversary. I wondered if he'd think of me that day. Probably not. When I was discharged, Mrs. Rodriguez helped me set up hospice at home, a hospital bed in my living room, medication for pain, a schedule of nurses rotating through. The apartment that had been my safe space for 12 years became a place to die. I spent my days sleeping, mostly. The medication made me foggy, but in my lucid moments, I'd think about my life, about what I'd done right, what I'd done wrong, whether I had any regrets. I didn't regret Daniel, not even now, not even with all this pain. Because loving him, raising him, giving him everything I had, that was the most meaningful thing I'd ever done, even if he didn't remember it that way now. Even if Rebecca had rewritten our story into something ugly, I knew the truth. I'd been there. I'd lived it. In late August, I got a message through the podcast. Someone had written to Dr. Brighton, asking her to pass it along to me. The message was from a woman named Lisa. Dear Margaret, I'm writing because I'm Rebecca. Not your Rebecca, but I was a Rebecca in someone else's story. 10 years ago, I married a man with a loving mother, and I saw her as competition. I thought his loyalty to her meant he couldn't fully love me. I spent 3 years slowly convincing him she was toxic, overbearing, controlling. I isolated him from her, and by the time he realized what I'd done, she died of a stroke. He never got to say goodbye. He never got to tell her he was sorry. Our marriage didn't survive his grief. He couldn't forgive me for stealing those years from him. I'm writing to tell you that what Rebecca is doing to you is evil, and I know this because I did it too, and I live with that guilt every single day. Your son will wake up one day. Maybe not before you die, maybe years from now. But he'll wake up, and he'll realize what he lost, what she took from him, and he'll carry that for the rest of his life. I'm so sorry for what I did to my ex-husband's mother, for what Rebecca is doing to you. You didn't deserve this. And I hope, somehow, your son figures it out in time. Lisa, I read that message over and over, and I realized something. I wasn't alone. This pattern, this cruelty, it was bigger than me and Daniel and Rebecca. It was a pattern of control and isolation that happened in families everywhere. And while I couldn't fix my own situation, maybe sharing my story was helping others recognize it in theirs. In September, the pain got worse. They increased my medication. I slept more than I was awake. When I was conscious, I'd stare at my phone. Part of me still hoping, still waiting for a miracle, for a message that said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm coming to see you." It never came. On September 14th, 2024, I woke up and knew, the way you just know sometimes. I was in my final days, maybe my final week. My body was shutting down. Patricia, my nurse, saw it too. She called hospice. They sent a chaplain. His name was Father Michael. He wasn't pushy about religion, just sat with me, asked if there was anything I needed to say, anyone I needed to forgive. I already forgave him, I said. My voice was barely a whisper now. I forgave him the moment he cut me off, because I'm his mother. That's what mothers do. Have you forgiven yourself? He asked. I hadn't thought about that. For what? For not being able to fix this, for not being able to make him see, for dying without closure. I thought about that for a long time. I don't know if I can. Try, he said gently. You did everything you could. You loved him with everything you had. You can't control his choices. You can only control your peace. That night, alone in my darkened living room with just the hum of the oxygen machine, I whispered to the empty room. I forgive myself. I did my best. I loved him well. That's enough. It has to be enough. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something close to peace. I'm writing this final section in early October 2024. I'm still here, barely. The doctors were wrong about the timeline. Or maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe I'm waiting for something I know isn't coming. My world has shrunk to this hospital bed, this living room, the rotation of nurses and hospice workers who keep me comfortable. Mrs. Rodriguez comes every day, sits with me, holds my hand. She's become the family I don't have. The online support group sends me messages daily. Prayers, love, stories of hope. Some women have reconciled with their children. Others, like me, haven't. But we're not alone anymore. That's what matters. 3 days ago, October 1st, something happened. Patricia came for her shift and told me she'd heard something. She looked uncomfortable, nervous. Margaret, I don't know if I should tell you this, she said. Tell me, I was at the grocery store yesterday. I overheard 2 women talking. One mentioned a Rebecca Fletcher, how she's this successful event planner, how she's married to this great guy, how they're trying for a baby. My breath caught. A baby? Patricia nodded. The other woman asked about his family, and Rebecca said he didn't have any. that he was raised in foster care, that it was a sad story but he'd overcome it. Foster care. My son, who I raised alone for 40 years, was telling people he grew up in foster care. Or his wife was, and he wasn't. Correcting her. I'd been erased, not just from his present, but from his past. I didn't exist anymore. In Rebecca's version of their story, I'd never existed at all. I should have been devastated, but instead, I felt something like relief, because now I knew. There was no confusion, no wondering if I'd misunderstood. This was deliberate, complete, final. My son had chosen to become an orphan rather than have a mother who didn't fit his wife's narrative. "I'm sorry," Patricia whispered. "I shouldn't have told you." "No," I said. I needed to know. I needed to understand how far this went. That night, I updated my ethical will. I added one line. "Daniel, you told people I didn't exist, and now, soon, that will be true. But I existed once. I existed every single day of your first 38 years. I existed in every sacrifice, every late night, every dollar stretched, every prayer whispered. You can erase me from your story, but you can't erase the truth. I was there, I loved you, and that was real. Even if you've chosen to forget it. I'm tired now, so tired. The morphine makes everything soft, blurry. Time feels different. Sometimes I dream about Daniel as a little boy. The dandelions, the burnt toast, his laugh. In my dreams, he's still mine. He still needs me. He still loves me. When I wake up, reality hits hard. But even then, I don't regret him, not even now. If you're listening to this and you see yourself in my story, please know this. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not bitter for recognizing patterns. You're not crazy for feeling the way you do. And if you're an adult child who's cut off a parent because someone convinced you it was necessary, ask yourself this. Whose voice are you hearing when you think about your childhood? Yours or theirs? Because sometimes the person who loves you most is the person who wants you all to themselves, and the cost of that exclusive love is everyone else who ever loved you. I don't know how much. Longer I have. Days, maybe hours. My breathing is getting harder. The pain breaks through even with medication. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm 71 years old. I raised a son alone. I worked hard. I loved fully. I gave everything I had. That's not nothing. That's a life. Maybe not the ending I wanted, but a life nonetheless. To the thousands of people who've reached out through the podcast, through the support groups, through messages and comments, thank you. You gave me community when I had none. You gave me validation when I felt crazy. You gave me purpose when I thought my story was meaningless. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever loved someone who rewrote your history? What did you do? How did you heal? Your stories matter, every single one, and maybe, together, we can break this cycle. Maybe we can teach our children that loyalty isn't about erasing your past. It's about honoring it while building your future. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for witnessing my life. Thank you for making sure I didn't disappear completely. Remember, saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person. And mothers who set boundaries aren't toxic. They're human. My name is Margaret. I was here. I mattered. I loved. And that was enough.